It's a brand new day. Welcome to the Morning Brief right here on Channels Television. We are broadcasting live from Lagos. I know I said that. In just a moment, you'll find out. 29th of June, 2026, just one more day, and we're going to say goodbye to the very first half of the year. Bukola, good morning.
Jeffrey, do I detect some excitement from you this morning?
No, we have come back to our country. We've come back to our country.
Well, it's the last Monday of the month, first day of the week. A cloudy one, looks like it's going to rain, but we're very grateful because it's the morning after a very showery night. Welcome to your perfect morning starter right here on Channels Television. And someone sitting beside me is very, very un-African this morning, Jeffrey.
No, not because I'm an African. I have supported all African countries in this World Cup.
Except?
No, I have supported. I'm saying, yes, South Africa pissed us off, made Africa angry because of the xenophobic attack. However, I will still support South Africa and the rest of Africa, but they are the first to come back to Africa. Well, that's the way the World Cup works, but that's not the focus for today. We still love you, South Africa, despite what's going on. You did your best, but, well, you're back. Bukola.
You are happy and it's not nice, Jeffrey.
I'm not happy. No, not exactly. I wanted Africa to go. I hope Africa can go farther, whether it's South Africa or any other country. But it's what it is when it comes to football. Well,
it's not unsurprising, some of the reactions coming through following South Africa's loss to Canada, at the World Cup match in the last couple of hours, especially because of, some of the reports, a lot of the reports that have come through on xenophobic attacks, some very, very unpretentious, unabashed with, South Africans stripping other nationals of their jobs and asking them to go home with the continuing, anti-immigrant protests coming through from South Africa. Africa really, is supposed to be one, stand as one against all forms of domination, including colonialism and new colonialism, that Africa continues to experience many decades after independence. It's important to re-emphasize the point that really, beyond the humor, beyond the current division and all forms of racism, being experienced, being witnessed in North Africa, South Africa, and even in Europe and in other parts of the world, Africa really should stand as one. And we look forward to that time, where indeed there will be a true Pan-African spirit that pervades the continent and even outside the continent in the diaspora. But there's more for us to look at this morning. The medical sector, Jeffrey.
Yes, the resident doctors are warning Nigerians and especially the federal government that they are giving an extension of 4 more weeks for all of the disputes they have with the federal government. So they are declaring ahead of time that the ultimatum will last for another 4 weeks. And there are sundry demands they are making, which are not new. Among its demands are the immediate release of the 2026 Medical Residency Training Fund. So these are funds that is made to support people that are doing their residency in terms of all they need in terms of funding and materials and research that is required of them. They say they're asking for the release of those funds. I think it's a legitimate demand. Payment of all outstanding salary, promotion, and professional allowance arrears, as well as improved protection for healthcare workers. So to be fair, they also listed the fact that they commended some things that have been done both at the federal and the state level, but for these ones, they're insisting it has to be done in the next 4 weeks, else we're going to have the biggest population of our doctors, because if you go to the hospital, we have consultants and specialists, and then we have the resident doctors, which are in the majority. And when resident doctors go on strike, it's always very, very troubling. So we appeal to the federal government to do the needful. Kola.
Indeed. And beyond that, there's also politics in the air. And this story came through over the weekend with the Kogi State High Court asking INEC to deregister, the Nigeria Democratic Congress, NDC, a party that has fielded the Obi Kwankwaso, ticket as their presidential and vice presidential candidate for the 2027 general election. That Kogi state government set aside the initial judgment of December 2025 when it asked INEC to register the Nigeria Democratic Congress, and hence, the description that NDC got its registration by court order. But we heard here the founder of the NDC yesterday on our sister political program rejecting that judgment in its entirety, in fact challenging that court for lacking jurisdiction, for stating specifically that it shouldn't have sat on that matter on appeal, having heard that matter before. And Senator Seraki Dixon has appealed to all their candidates that have emerged through congresses and primaries to be patient and be assured that they will be on the ballot in 2027. We have the soundbite from the former governor of Bayelsa and senator representing Bayelsa West speaking on our sister political program yesterday.
Fair. For you to participate in political activities, you must be a political party. That applicant is unknown to the laws of this country. It is not a political association. It is also not a registered political party. It is not carrying out political activities. It is not sponsoring political candidates for this election or for any election at all. Nobody even knows the national chairman of that so-called association. Nobody knows the secretary. Nobody knows the office or headquarters. Nobody knows any member. Only someone described herself as pro tem legal advisor of an association. And it's even anomalous that it refers to itself as a party. It is not a political party. So, ab initio, there was no legal, justiciable person, no juristic person before the court.
There are so many things concerning about the political litigations and jurisprudence I've seen in the last few weeks in Nigeria, and it's very concerning. So that doesn't sound like you're speaking for and against. I'm more interested. I have never been against or never really worried myself about what politicians can do, the extent they can go to maybe undermine the process using institutional sophistry, and because I just feel that it's almost in their nature for most of them to do these things. That's why the law is there to check. Remember the issue of Justice Lifu, when the appellate court has made a pronouncement over an issue to stay action, it went ahead and it did, and it was thoroughly, scolded, quote unquote. And then this has also happened. So from his word, he said they are not, so you become a political association, then try to register to become a political party. He said these people are neither any. So what is the bone of contention here is the logo, the image or the branding that, of the NDC as against this PMP, I think that's the name of the party. And they say that the NDC is bearing their own, or there's a conflict in the imaging, and they decided to approach the court. And then this case has been decided since December. So I don't want to go to the details, because we're going to go to that detail when we have the lawyer here. So I have my list of legal questions beyond political questions to ask. However, what troubles me is the political import of all of this. At least I'm fully aware of what played out in the Jonathan era. I'm fully aware of what played out in the Muhammadu Buhari era. And now we're fully aware of what's playing out in the President Bola Tinubu era. To the best of my knowledge from where I sit, I may be wrong, this is the worst when it comes to opposition parties in Nigeria, comparing these three administrations in terms of instability. Some you may say they are self-inflicted, some they are saying is orchestrated. What is even more concerning is that we must be careful as a nation, because I'm thinking to myself, let's even project into the future. The NDC has an issue now. The ADC has an issue now. Those are the two parties that can challenge the APC. What if we get close to the election and the court rules that they can't participate? Do we know what we are going to be walking into?
Up against.
We will have to be careful. So I'm talking to the APC, I'm talking to the NDC, I'm talking to the ADC, Labour, everybody. Those of you in the political class, as you politic, whether through institutions or literal politics, please bear in mind that there's a point it gets to, it's no longer a game. It will border on issues that worry the nation. And I don't want to bait anything. So we must be careful as a people, because no matter the legitimacy of what it is, which is also a strong point to raise, we must be careful as a nation. But the opposition must also realize that this is also part of the game for distraction and distortion. Because right now, we're not busy engaging them on what they can profile to the APC, because they are fighting for survival.
And that is taking away all
of the attention on the real issues.
National questions.
I don't like what is going on as a person. This is not a few months election where parties are still fighting over leadership, logo. Come on now.
Well, indeed, we're going to be asking all of the critical questions around this particular subject in the next couple of minutes, with the lawyers. But there are some questions beyond legal that the electoral umpire should be answering at this particular point in time. And perhaps the electoral umpire has a reasonable portion of the blame in this particular subject matter, because I have gone back to check the list of 110 political parties that INEC had said it received applications for, political associations rather. They first of all have to apply to INEC to become political parties. So I have gone to check the 110, and the names of this peace movement party that has brought this challenge against the NDC, and the NDC, in fact, were not in the first 110. Of course, INEC updated that list to 174, presenting applications. I'm wondering if the PMP and the NDC was there. The founder of the NDC has said that, repeatedly, that NDC has been at the matter of registration since 2017. But don't forget that this is not the first challenge to the propriety of the registration processes of the NDC before it became a political party. The chieftain of the All Democratic Alliance Party, I believe ADA, Mr. Arudo, has been repeatedly challenging the process of NDC becoming a political party, saying that it did not participate in the processes as all the other political parties. And in fact, in recent times he has said that they're still in court and the NDC will be deregistered. Of course, we could question the intention and motive of Mr. Arudo in this particular matter, because if he is in the pursuit of the ADA becoming a political party, then why concern yourself, in the bid to ensuring the deregistration of another? But one must look at the challenge that Mr. Arudo brings to the NDC and ask INEC why it has not, been transparent, been open in the reasons why, providing explanations and the reasons why some political parties did not make the list and the others did not make the list. And, in this era of INEC, under perhaps towards the end of, the former INEC chairman and Professor Amopiton, we have hardly had, regular public engagement with INEC, unlike when the national commissioner was, what's his name again? Jeffrey, remind me. The former INEC National Commissioner on Voter Education, who had, yes, Mr. Festus Okoye, who had constant engagements with INEC. For instance, Mr. Arudo has been asking why INEC only announced that NDC got registration by court order in February, when the actual judgment had come in December 2025. That's another question that INEC should ask. And if some political associations feel excluded from the process, INEC should also provide answers to that effect. In the court order that ensured the registration of the NDC to becoming a political party, the person named in the suit is a certain Mohammed Sani others versus INEC. So who is this Sani, and why did the face of the NDC now become that of Senator Seriake Dixon months to the general election, when there is political rallying and people are seeking alternative platforms for expression to pursue their political aspiration? These are critical questions that INEC must answer. And if these issues prevail, little wonder then that there's so much contention, there's so much agitation characterizing the political process a few months to the general election, so much confusion. Hence Jeffrey's question that what we're supposed to be having now is, intellectual political engagement with serious national questions about what alternatives these political associations bring to the table. Rather, this is where we are, asking about deregistration and political undertones shaping, the pursuit of bringing down one political party by another political association. So INEC, it appears, hasn't really done well.
INEC has questions to answer. The political parties themselves ask questions to answer. Everybody has questions to answer. Our job is to ask the questions. But we'll take a break, but before that, the death toll in the Venezuela earthquake, 7.1, 7.5, has increased to over 1,000, I think 300. Our thoughts and our prayers are with that country. And from what we hear from Venezuela, it looks like that number is expected to increase anytime soon, because people are still being brought out from the rubble. People are still being trapped under those rubble. So there is Venezuela has gone through in the recent years or recent period, just recently, warm waters, literally. So our prayers and our thoughts are with them. We'll continue to update you on some of the recoveries, on some of the rescue. But as we speak, the number has exceeded, I think, 1,300. I need to confirm that. Yes.
1,446 or thereabouts.
1,430 people have so far. The bodies, rather, have been recovered from this particular scene. But we'll take a break, and we'll come back after the break. We'll get to the papers. Stay with us. Mr. Dayo Kintabi joins us on the program. Thank God it's Monday. Yes. Good morning. As always, your favorite day of the week.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's get to the papers as quickly as we can. Let me see. Yep, this Nigeria. I think I should be ready now. This Nigeria. Two quick stories I want you to binge on. Fuel prices. Profiteering marketers in trouble. Sanctions over failure to cut prices despite crude oil slump on the card, says FCCPC. So we've seen the prices of Brent go to almost $70. It revolves around 72 or 73. I like to check it whilst I'm talking from the places where we check some of these numbers. Okay, as we speak right now, it's revolving around $72, while the WTI has literally gone back to the pre-war numbers, $66. But, we use the Brents generally. So this is a time, this is a good time for Bukola, because Bukola has been here. Bukola arrived here 2 months ago. Then we just got to this station. Bukola is asking that question. Why are we not buying it at 800 naira per liter?
Well,
maybe you have answers.
Yes, well, profiteering.
I can no longer defend anything anymore.
Praise God.
Profiteering is the first nature of capitalism. That's the truth. And in situations like this, entrepreneurs who've been taking risks, borrowing money from banks, they see a little window of opportunity to make a little bit of extra money, they will do that. That does not make it necessarily right, but that's the nature of capitalism. It's dog eat dog, it's made the fittest survive, survival of the fittest. Now, what they will say ostensibly is that they are still selling old stock that they bought expensive, and until they liquidate that old stock, they can't cut the prices, otherwise they'll take a loss. The issue now is, can the regulator confirm whether they've actually liquidated the old stock and they're now using new stock that they purchased at the lower price? But truth be told, if what they're selling is the old stock that they bought at a higher price, we can't really expect that they would cut the price and take a loss on it. So that's why we have agencies like the Federal Consumer Protection Agency that's threatening them that, look, if you are exploiting the market intentionally and taking advantage of the consumers, and by that, I'm sure that they have a yardstick by which they use to measure. And I don't think the regulator itself will expect that what you bought high, you should sell low. But what we're saying as consumers is the moment you liquidate the old stock and the new cheaper stock comes in, you should cut your price. So the question is, since the price reduced, have they had an opportunity to sell the old stock, and have they now started receiving? Remember, there's a window by which the new stock will come in. It takes days for the ships to get here. It's not an overnight adjustment. I know that we have this sense in Nigeria that when prices go up, they never come back down. But truth be told is that it does take some time in the value chain for things to move from the point of bringing the oil up, the price reducing in the international market, the product getting refined, and then getting transported all the way back here, and then getting cleared and then distributed to all the fuel stations. It takes quite a bit of time. So I didn't expect to see a drastic cut overnight. I didn't expect that. But Dangote has cut by about 50 naira, 75 naira per litre here and there, because to some extent he gets some of the crude here locally and refines it locally, so that transportation time window is cut out. So I expect that with the FCCPC's threat, we should begin to see reductions gradually over time. Hopefully we'll get to Bukola's benchmark of 800 naira per litre.
Nigeria's benchmark, really?
Absolutely.
Maybe it's Bukola speaking for Nigeria.
Bukola speaking for Nigeria, yes.
People wonder whether the FCCPC can intervene, because they have a regulator called the NMDPRA.
Yes.
That's another question, Bukola.
Well, I'm wondering if that time... Well, we shouldn't be happy just yet, because Nigerians are not particularly happy. Nigerians are not smiling.
Not yet.
I'm just wondering if that time factor comes to play in all of this, because recall that in May or sometime before May, the federal government had announced an increase in the measure of crude supplied to the refinery.
Yes.
And, you know, nothing changed even amid all of that. And if, you know, WTI is 66 naira per litre, the pre-war price, why are we still buying, you know, at 1,205 naira, 1,250 naira per litre, you know, depending on where, you know, Nigerians are buying from.
Yes.
In capitalism, the books are not, for entrepreneurs, the books are not always open to know, you know, what profit sharing is concerned, what the entrepreneur is profiting from, because we also do not know their capital.
Yes.
But if there was any doubt in our minds that there's a Shylock element now, that doubt has been erased by what is still being sold against the backdrop of what, you know, was being sold during prior to the war. But let's see now whether this next story is a consequence of the fact that there has been some, you know, measure of gain from crude oil sale amid the war, against the backdrop of what actually obtains at home in domestic spending. And the Vanguard captures the story this way. Look at the front page of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. FG others struggling to meet obligations despite rise in revenue. If you want to know why, you'll have to pick up a copy and read page 11. But let's see, perhaps the insights will give us an idea. A revenue may hit 150 trillion naira by year end. Revenue figure excludes foreign domestic borrowings during period. Civil society groups raise alarm, call for outcome-driven approach to public spending. Issue is not revenue growth, but accountability. That's ascribed to, of course, Dr. Muda Yusuf, the director of CPPE. Mr. Kitobi, there's more, but you have quite enough to chew on already from those insights.
Absolutely. Well, if you follow a logical order, it should make sense that once government revenue rises, it should not only be able to meet its obligations, it should even have extra that it can now provide succor to the people. Like, for example, we've had a lot of browbeating, a lot of chest thumping about the fact that our foreign reserves are at unprecedented levels. But we haven't seen that translate into meaningful gains for the ordinary Nigerian on a daily basis. So if there's a rise in revenue, there should be a consequent on the other side of the accounting equation, capability to meet all obligations. So you ask yourself, why the disconnect? Why is revenue up and at the same time you now can't meet your obligations? So what exactly is happening? Is it simply that as revenue is rising, spending is increasing as well? Remember, this report says borrowings are not included at all. So there's still a separate level of quote-unquote revenue that's coming in from borrowings. But even if just the income that's accruing to the government from crude oil sales, from taxation, from import duties, all of the places where, you know, the government derives revenue from, you would expect that meeting its obligations, salaries, pensions, contractor obligation, contractor payments, and those kind of things should be a piece of cake. So where's the disconnect coming from? Is it accountability? Is it that government spending? You know, the kind of thing. There's a tendency that when you see more money coming in, there's a tendency to spend more because you think you have more to spend. But if you look at the opposite side of the balance sheet, there are obligations that you have to meet that don't necessarily give you the ability to spend more simply because more money has come in. Perhaps you are struggling to meet those obligations before, and what you should now do is be more prudent in your spending because now you have enough to meet those obligations. So where is that disconnect coming from? Is there a that's diverting some of that revenue? Is it that government has ratcheted up its spending when it shouldn't have? Is it that the devaluation of the naira has made things more expensive even for government? We complain that devaluation of the naira has made our spending power reduce, but the same thing affects government as well. For every extra payment that we make, things cost the government a lot more as well. I mean, yeah, okay, so salaries are stagnating. The chief of staff was talking the other day that 70,000 naira minimum wage is not sustainable anymore, and government would look at doing something about it. But all of its other costs have gone up as well due to the devaluation of the naira. So that could also play an impact on it. But the point is, we want more transparent accounting. We want to. The reason for this kind of story is because there's a trust deficit. We don't trust the government. We don't have confidence in the fact that the government is being prudent, that the government is being honest, that the government is prioritizing the interest of the Nigerian citizen before everything else. That trust deficit is what leads to these kind of questions that you got more money in. How come you can't pay your bills? You're not publicizing your accounts. You're not telling us how much came in, how you spent it. So how can we trust you? We just see a lot of lavish living on the part of our politicians. We see extensive convoys. We see private jets. We see Esther Code. We see big crowds when they go on foreign junkets. So government spending is heavy. And they are the largest employer of labor as well, so their salary bill alone is humongous. So when you look at all those things, you ask yourself that, is government really being as prudent as it should be? Otherwise, why in an age of increased revenue that they can't meet their obligations? Now look, the US-Iran tensions are easing. So this windfall that we've experienced in the last 2 months is going to ease off. It's going to drop back down. So it's just a bubble. This extra money really is just a bubble because, like you say, oil has come down now from above $100 to
it's getting to 70 on the Brent, below 670 or even on WTI.
So that's $30 to $40 per barrel less per day. So if now that we've got more money, we can't cover our bills, what happens when the price of crude corrects to a lesser amount? We'll be in more trouble, won't we?
Interesting. Let's go to New Telegraph and talk a bit of politics. And this is more of the internal issues within the APC. Primaries, APC disowns list of successful candidates in circulation, says it's fake, unauthorized, internal collation, verification processes ongoing as according to sources. You know what makes me laugh with political parties is that internal democracy is still a struggle, even for the ruling party. Remember when this election happened? until now, we don't have comprehensive, complete list. At least in an initial list,
yes,
we can now say, okay, there's replacement for whatever reason, agitation. What do you make of it?
Well, I mean, I'm shocked that over a month ago they had the primaries and we don't have a list of candidates yet. And I kept saying, what is the delay? What is the hold-up? Why? And of course, the first thing that comes to your mind is that there's manipulation going on. I mean, first of all, the primary...
Negotiation going on.
Okay, if you want to euphemize it, negotiation, okay, fine. The point is, even the primaries were fraught with, I don't want to say irregularities, but discontent. A lot of people who were involved in the primaries, especially in the ruling party, claimed that consensus didn't work the way it was supposed to work. Candidates were imposed. And there was a lot of grievances. So my sense is that a list is not that easy to compile because there's so many complaints, and you've seen some protests here and there in terms of some candidates being sidelined, or the person we voted for is not whose name is being put forward. So my sense is that they can't release the list because there's too much conflict. So they're probably trying to put their house in order, pacify some people, perhaps make some adjustments in cases where, you know, there's resistance, where they see it could escalate into a conflagration. So probably the most credible reason for why it hasn't been released yet is because they're working on the list to make it palatable to their party members. So what it means is that it may not be the will of the majority that's prevailing, which is what you're talking about, internal democracy. Perhaps that's not what we're going to see. Perhaps it just might be some backroom dealing, some promises here. Okay, you stay down this time, next time we'll give it to you. You know, politics has a lot to do with give and take, negotiation, horse trading, exactly. So, but it's worrisome because they've had their primaries for quite a while now. To not have seen the list at a time when deadlines are coming up, election is a few months away, it kind of makes nonsense of the whole electoral process, to tell you the truth. Well, if this is an indicator of what is to come in 2027, it's worrisome.
Really worrisome there. Let's remain with the New Telegraph this morning and look at the bottom strip. There's a story there that is, you know, that formed one of our topics for discussion as we closed the week last week. Lawyers back special courts for kidnappers, bandits trial. The story is page 2, 3, and 16 read inside New Telegraph. But there are some insights here. Planned attacks on Borno military bases. Troops arrest suspected ISWAP spy, signed death warrant of convicted bandits. Islamic cleric tells governors. Oshomole supports death penalty for kidnappers, bandits in Edo. And so that, you know, particular declaration by Governor Monday Okpebholo of Edo State seems to be receiving a groundswell of support. But, you know, Jeffrey has observed rightly that governors do not always want to sign the death warrant. But if this is an example of what is possible, what are your thoughts on this, Mr. Akitobi?
I remember that when Adams Oshiomhole was governor of Edo State, I believe he signed a death warrant, and I think that that execution was actually carried out. So this is in keeping with what he has always believed in, and his successor after his successor, Monday Okpebholo, is towing the same line. Now, when you look at the aggregation of all those news, it begins to indicate that we're finally taking this terrorism thing seriously. You see that the military had some successes in the last couple of days in terms of putting down some insurrection, in terms of arresting people. You see this notion about the setting up of a special court, because you know that the way of jurisprudence in Nigeria is convoluted and goes through a long, winding road. But in as much as this terrorism issue is a national emergency, desperate times call for desperate measures. Mm-hmm. So I do agree that there should be a special court that is set up to deal with these issues and has some of the procedural roadblocks removed to where perhaps the trials can be speedy, you know, investigation speedy, trial speedy, conviction speedy, and you know, whatever the punishment is, meted out speedily. Because everything about jurisprudence, apart from getting justice for the victims, the other primary thing is serving as a deterrence. when people are incarcerated for years and years and years and you don't hear anything about their cases anymore, or you hear about repentant bandits being de-radicalized and sent back into society, it doesn't serve as a deterrent to other people. And right now, I believe the government's focus is to send a resounding message that we will no longer tolerate this kind of behavior from people, and if you so much as have any reason to even think about it, you will be able to see what we will do to you if it happens. You know, I remember back in the days of our youth when Bar Beach here, that is now the Coastal Road, where they used to take armed robbers, they tie them all up in public and execute them for us all to see. I believe that had an impact in quelling that type of behavior, and I'd be very happy to see that come back again in this age of kidnapping.
Before we wrap up, Mr. Kinzo, I don't know how you can do this in 30 seconds.
I'll try.
Abuja and Kwara, we handle projects too. Pay us, contractors have told Wiki.
See. More money, but yet we owe and can't pay. And we've seen these people with placards in front of the FCT ministry and they're complaining about not getting paid. This is unconscionable. They've done the job. Certificate of completion has been issued. Inspections have been done. They borrowed money to do this job. They should be paid. I don't see why this is happening. And it's not like the FCT doesn't have a budget. You see the minister going out to commission projects every other day.
I'm sure he's going to commission one today as well.
I'm sure he is. So.
He's a busy man.
Absolutely.
As a matter of fact. But I understand we have a bit more time. So I want to go back to another paper just before we begin to wind down some of these things that had happened. Let's go back to that Vanguard newspaper.
All right.
It's been a long time. So two stories, if you can. You will go back to Vanguard newspaper. The 2027 timeline, INEC parties disagree over access codes for candidates. So they're supposed to have the access codes to be
able to upload your candidate's name.
You know, INEC said they're not in receipt of the ruling of the court.
Yes.
You know, yet, so perhaps they are waiting for that document to get to them. But we also understand
that's the NDC case.
We also understand that the NDC most likely will appeal that case. So what do you make of this?
Yes, I listened to the NDC leader on our sister show yesterday, and essentially he was trying to make a case as to why the judgment is faulty. He said the party that they said was not joined in the case is not actually a party, and how could they be claiming that NDC used their logo and blah, 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 blah. Well, the lawyers will talk about the legality, but the point is the timing seems very suspect, and you know, some people are saying that a court cannot invalidate its own judgment. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know. But what I do know is that this has caused a lot of instability in the political process. We're a few months to an election. We should be done and dusted with everything to do with registration of parties, nomination of candidates, uploading of names. All that should have been done and dusted. This close to the election, for us to still be having unresolved issues to do with registration, name, logo, members, candidates, it goes to show that there's quite a bit of chaos in the system, and it's not portending well for 2027, because we need to have a seamless election. And there's already issues with logistics and all that in an election, and if the pre-election matters this late in the day are still so unresolved, there's no party without crisis, there's no party without INEC issues. You didn't even mention PDP when you were. The PDP has 2 presidential candidates.
ADC has 3.
ADC has. So I don't feel good. I don't envy INEC at all, trying to sort out the mess among all the parties. But you know, in terms of the codes, the chairman said until he sees the certified true copy of the judgment.
Yeah, the ruling.
The ruling itself, that they've not been served, so he can't react to it. So we wait and see. That should happen in the next day or two.
Mr. Dayakintobi, as always, thank you. It's a pleasure to always have you. Give your expert insight on these issues. We appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thank God it's Monday, where rest is over. And rest is
it's
over.
time to go make the money.
Time to get out there and build something.
By the way, South Africa is back.
They're back home.
They're my friends.
Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, as a matter of fact, let's tell you what's up. We're going to talk about the NDC court case extensively with a legal mind. Of course, we also talk about the NIMC issue about your data. What is the latest based on the NIMC acts that the president has signed? And we'll touch base with state police. That's the outlook of the program for today. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. So let's talk about your data, the management of your data, and what's in the new NIMC Act 2026 and what it means for you. And joining us this morning from the National Identity Management Commission is Mrs. Uche Chigbo. She's the Coordinating Director, Operations, National Identity Management Commission, and she joins us from our Abuja studio. Good morning, Mrs. Chigbo. A very warm welcome to the Morning Brief.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Indeed. Now, President Bola Tinubu, when signing the new NIMC Act 2026, couldn't have been more trite when he said that the National Identity Management Commission holds the key to the trust and safety of Nigerians' data because of, the critical nature of privacy, without quoting him copiously. And so with regards to the sacredness of the data of Nigerians, what's in the new NIMC Act that guarantees protection for the personal information data of Nigerians?
Okay, before I'll go into answering your question, I'd like to provide a little bit of context. The NIMC 2007 Act has been the foundational legal framework for the existence of the National Identity Management Commission and also the implementation of the identity agenda of Nigeria. With evolving security challenges, with technological advancements, with the enactment of the Nigeria Data Protection Act, and also with the ever-growing digital economy in Nigeria, it became necessary for a critical and comprehensive review and update of that legislature. So it's that legislature, that the update that gave birth to the 2026 NIMC Act, which provides for a lot of critical areas. And I'll mention them and then I'll go straight to answering your question. The Act in itself has expanded the statutory objectives of the National Identity Management Commission and enabling NIMC to be able to administer and regulate the identity sector. One of the critical components was the incorporation of the digital identity and also incorporation of the global best practices that we have. In terms of your question, the NIMC also, the new act has a robust data protection and privacy provisions that aligns with the Nigeria Data Protection Act. So by this new act, NIMC is required to comply fully with the Nigerian Data Protection Act and ensure the data protection of citizens' data and also ensure privacy of data and the transactions that we administer.
Interesting. So I'm looking through, some, you call it like a dashboard highlights of what this portends for the average Nigerian. But I want to, if you call it jumping the gun, permit me. So I know that in my pocket as I sit here, if I remember correctly, except I didn't carry all of them, I have my personal ID card, I have my debit card. If you have more than one bank, you can know how many that is. I have my driver's license, there's a voter card maybe in the car or in the house. Then are we talking about another additional card to the cards we have? Because it looks like the idea is about data integration at one source. Walk us through the operationalization of what this act is supposed to achieve.
Okay, the new act is moving from a card-centric approach to identity credentials approach, giving us flexibility to issue identity credentials based on evolving technological advancements or applicable technology and some identity concepts as we move forward in the era that we are in. So that's what the Act is envisaging. And also part of the provisions of the Act is the designation of NIMC as the repository of all biometric data capture for proper identity management coordination and harmonization. Within that same context, NIMC has also been designated as a root certification authority for the national public key infrastructure. We all know that the public key infrastructure is the cornerstone of securing digital communications across board. So NIMC has the responsibility for public key infrastructure implementation and also as issuing authority, and also to implement the digital public infrastructure with the ecosystem approach that we have already embarked on. So all of these are the things that guarantees that we will issue identity credentials. We are moving from the era of just having a general multipurpose card to issuing identity credentials. It could be in the form of a token, it could be in the form of numbers, it could be in the form of mobile ID that you carry on your phones, etc. So that's where we are right now with regards to the NIMC Act.
But some of the explainers, say that you require one card for multiple possibilities. And we already have a surfeit of identities in this country. We have national driver's license, you have international passport, you have your NIN, your NIN card, you have your voter card, and this adds to it. Please explain this one card for multiple possibilities, and does it replace, in terms of authenticity, all of these cards that we already carry with us?
Okay, I want to explain that the national identification number that we issue is a foundational identity for every Nigerian citizen and legal resident in Nigeria. So what you're referring to in terms of all the other identities are classified as functional identities. These are identities that rely on the foundational identity. The NIMC identity is answering the question, who are you? While the functional identity is answering the question, now we know who you are you eligible to benefit from a scheme, to transact in this business, to access this service, to become part of a government scheme or a private sector scheme? So they are two separate entities. So the foundational identity is the valid means of ID, NIN, the valid means of ID for identifying every single person that is of Nigerian descent and is living in Nigeria or is also living in diaspora. So we need to make that distinction so that we can understand that clearly. And then moving forward, there is no replacement in terms of what we are doing. We are establishing that foundational ID, and we are saying that we are taking a new approach. We are embracing the innovation that is in the technology sector, and we're saying that we can now issue identity credentials in whatever format that is applicable or appropriate with this century that we are in. So your identity can come in the form of a card, it can come in the form of a token, it can come in the form of a credential. That's what the new act is looking at. So the new act is forward-looking, future-ready, and trying to be internationally compliant and also compliant with the global best practice.
So are we going to begin to have to obtain this one card for multiple possibilities in the near future? Are Nigerians going to begin queuing at NIMC offices to secure this card?
There are plans in place to launch and roll out the identity credential that we'll be issuing to people. I'm sure in due course, a lot of information will be given once the launch is done on how to obtain the identity credential that we are talking about. But the focus is that the NIMC Act has been strengthened, and a lot of the provisions has also been expanded to help us to administer and regulate the identity sector in Nigeria. For example, within the Act, there is the expanded mandatory use framework that the identity can be used across 14 transaction categories that has been provisioned in the Act. There's also a significant enhancement in the penalties, administrative sanctions, and also the fines that are applicable for either people who violate or breach any of the provisions of the NIMC Act in terms of unauthorized access, in terms of unauthorized usage, in terms of people who charge beyond the prescribed fee for our identity services, or people who just decide to charge fee where NIMC has not set any fee for any of the identity services. So there is a whole lot that is in the new NIMC Act. And within the next coming days or weeks, NIMC will embark on a nationwide campaign so that we can raise public awareness on the provisions of the new NIMC Act 2026, and we can also educate the stakeholders that we have on what the provisions are, what are those rights, what are those obligations, and what are those sanctions, like I mentioned. So there's going to be a whole lot that NIMC will be unpacking in the coming weeks and months, because we need the public to be compliant on the new NIMC Act. We also need to reinforce NIMC's role as the regulator of identity sector in Nigeria.
At face value, it looks very exciting, and we hope it follows through in terms of implementation, because one of the embarrassing things we have had to deal with as a nation is the inability to be able to state just how many we are. It's a question Nigeria can answer as a country. How many are we? The last time we did a census was 2006, and we've not been able to do any census, so we're just making assumptions based on birth rate and all of the analytics we use. So this is good on paper. We hope it's going to be implemented. So, but the question where I'm going to with all of this, rural dwellers, is at the back of my mind. Does this mean going forward, although it's been implemented already, but actively, there may be possibly a situation where you won't be able to do any form of transaction without having your NIMC? Or NIN, not NIMC, NIN, that's the word.
That has already been in operation since the advent of NIMC, and since NIMC Act has been existing since 2007. That has always been a provision of the Act, that the NIN is the valid means of identity for accessing government services. So if you're accessing any government service, be it in the National Health Insurance, contributing health insurance scheme, whether you are a taxpayer, you want to pay tax, whether you're a student, you want to take examination, and all the other services that has been listed previously in the NIMC Act, they are still there, that NIN remains the valid means of identity.
Yeah, yes, that's why I was saying, maybe there's a word I wanted to add to it, but it didn't come through. So that everything, maybe you're voting, whatever it is, because we have an issue right now with the issue of the voter card. But talk to us about, you've highlighted it, which is quite important, data protection. What are we looking at? I've seen the highlight as much as 20 million and maybe 5 years imprisonment and all of that. So talk to us about how effective you expect, or the agency expects this to be, because sometimes when you put out laws, and you put out this consequence, and we don't make examples of people, it just becomes paperwork.
Well, NIMC has been collaborating with a lot of security agencies to ensure full compliance to the provisions of the NIMC Act, especially when it comes to all the penalties and punishable offenses that are captured in the Act. We are also working closely with the Nigeria Data Protection Commission to ensure full compliance, whether from our employees or the people that are accessing the identity services, that everybody who is participating in the identity ecosystem complies fully with the Nigerian Data Protection Act. NIMC is required as an organization to also comply in terms of purpose limitation, the principle of purpose limitation, where identity data that has been captured will be used for the purpose for which it was intended for. We also have the principle of consent, making sure that the consent of the owners of the data, which is you and I, are gotten before that data can be shared for the purposes of assessing services or facilitating access to services. So those are all the things that within the coming weeks we'll be operationalizing, and we will be breaking them down bit by bit to help the public understand what those provisions, what those obligations, what those rights are within the new 2026 NIMC Act.
All right. Very quickly, if you can do this in 60 seconds. In the past, there have been reports of access to the back end of NIMC and the selling of the data of Nigerians. Is there any provision in this new act that, recommends punitive sanctions and, of course, secures the back end of NIMC from illegal sale of Nigerians' data?
I would like to make a point of correction. There is no access to the back end of NIMC system. The only access that NIMC provides is access to the verification platform that enables people to authenticate and verify the national identification numbers that are being presented at the point of transaction or access to services. That's where people can access the verification platform. And I also want to put also a clarification that that platform, it's not the actual NIMC identity database. It's a mirror of people who have been enrolled and issued NIN. And we create that access for people to be able to authenticate and verify those identities before services are provided.
All right. There's more to follow up on that, but we'll have to, anchor the conversation at this point. And thank you very much for coming on the program to provide all of these insights into the new NIMC Act 2026 that repeals the old Act of 2007. Mrs. Uche Chibo is the Coordinating Director, Operations, National Identity Management Commission. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
And you as well. And from here, we'll take a moment. When we return, it'll be time to explore all of the legal implications in the court order ordering the deregistration of the Nigeria Democratic Coalition, Congress rather. Stay with us for details in just a moment.
Welcome back. Let's bring in our guest, legal practitioner, Liberal Ochoma, joins us on the program. Mr. Ochoma, thank you so much for coming on the program. It's a quick return for you on this one. Good morning. If you can help us unmute your device so we can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yes, so we had to call on you because what is going on has to be interpreted by legal minds. So we told the politicians to hold on, let the lawyers explain to us what exactly is playing out. So I have my questions will stay more on the legalese here. So the underlying issue here is about the logo of a group or an association called the PMP as against the NDC, which is a registered political party by a court order that ordered the court ordered INEC to register it in December 2025. Now, the issue in question is that a court that gave that particular order in Lokoja sat on it again to say, we didn't get all the material, let me use a layman's term, all the things that we're supposed to get as far as this issue is concerned, especially it has to do with identity conflict. So based on the new information we have, please, you see that position we took, we're setting it aside. Let's start again. Help us understand what is going on here. Who has locus? Can the court sit on his own judgment? Help us make sense of the situation.
Yeah, thank you for having me once again on almost similar issues that we had discussed before now. Remember the last time I was in the studio. Unfortunately, I'm not able to come to the studio today because I have my leg hot. Let's backtrack a little and look at this issue, looking at the logo, for example. The court, because we all agree, it's a preliminary, it's a notorious fact that once the court delivers a judgment, the court becomes factus officius, except it can be shown that that judgment was, there was non-service on the other party, and that judgment was obtained by fraud, or that material evidence was suppressed. But in this case, the question you would ask, looking at the fact of the case, was material evidence suppressed? So let's look at what actually happened. When the judge first considered the originating summons, and if you look at the affidavit, the counter affidavit of INEC in that matter, even in the judgment, this present judgment, the court did say that INEC deposed to the counter affidavit that the reason for not registering the NDC was a conflict in logo. So the issue of logo was a material fact that was argued in that application. But the court in its wisdom went ahead and requested INEC to go ahead to register the NDC. So the logo issue is not a fact that was suppressed, and it is not a fact that just came to the fore. And then secondly, when was this judgment delivered? The judgment was delivered on the 10th of December 2025. And when was this application to set aside filed? The application to set aside was filed on the 5th of May 2026. That's almost 5 days short of clear 5 months. And if you look at, I think, the case of Hope and Hope Rising, Supreme Court had decided succinctly that in looking at the application for a review or to set aside, you also look at the attitude of the applicant. Was it timely? Did the applicant act in a manner that the court will agree with them that they did not see this judgment early, and that so they are coming 5 months after? Is 5 months after reasonable enough to say that, yes, the court can now sit back and review the judgment that they delivered 5 months ago? Also, will the other party be prejudiced? I take our mind back to the issue of the Supreme Court judgment in Umaru and INEC. In 2007, the Supreme Court agreed that there were irregularities in our election. Justice Nikitobi of blessed memory, in his wisdom, agreed, even though the minority judgment of Justice Ogutade disagreed. But the majority judgment read by Justice Nikitobi said that there were irregularities in our election, in that election, but for public policy's sake, and public policy can be all encompassing, the fact that the money that have been spent in that process, the money that will be spent also in doing the election, and also for that reason, those irregularities were not substantial enough, and so they allowed the election. In this case, you ask the question, will the other party be prejudiced? Based on the court judgment that the court had delivered, that party had gone ahead to collect money from people, and they had also gone ahead to register people. They had registered members, some members who have had to travel and incur costs. All of this, the court didn't put it into consideration to say, well, we consider the issue of logo in the first place, and then also your application is coming very late, too late in the day. And then lastly, we put into consideration the issue of public policy. People that had shifted their position acted on the order that the court made. At this rate, we can no longer reverse what we have done. And so we will ask you to go to the Court of Appeal if there is time for you, because already they know that the time for appealing that judgment also had lapsed. And on this note, please permit me to quickly, I want to read the dictum of Agbola JSC in Nuhu and Ogele, in Oyebuchi and INEC. And he said, a decision by a court on an issue which that court cannot revisit, reopen or reconsider is a final decision on that issue. It matters not that the decision is made at the interlocutory stage or at the conclusion of the proceeding or that it does not finally determine the merit of the case or the right and interest of the parties. So in this case, the court had taken a decision. Whether it finally determines the right or interest of the party at this stage, it's immaterial, provided at the initial stage, when that originating summons was filed, the court had ample opportunity to look at the issue of logo, which they did before they granted that order, judgment to against INEC to register NDC. The court makes so much weather out of paragraph 14 and 15 of INEC counter affidavit, saying yes, the two logos are similar. That was the same reason that INEC gave in their previous counter affidavit why they did not register NDC ab initio.
So, Mr. Shoma, if I hear you correctly, you have said a number of things. In fact, you have provided us insight into the reason, the basis for the earlier ruling of the Kogi State High Court, that in fact there was full disclosure and the matter of logo was considered. You have also asked why this peace movement party waited a whole 5 months after before, raising this application for a review of the court order, amongst other things that you have said that have given us clarity. But I also want you to now speak to the position expressed by the founder of the party on our sister political program yesterday, wherein he challenged the jurisdiction of this court to consider a matter that it had initially reviewed, initially considered prior to this time, saying that it's not a court of appeal and it has no powers to review it. From your own legal standpoint, is that also valid?
Yes, that's why I told you, I cited the dictum of Ayola GSC just now in Onyebuchi and INEC. And also, there are ingredients that the court must consider in reviewing its own judgment to set aside that judgment. In this case, was there patent defect? Even if there are patent defects that the judge would consider, the question is, does he have the power to consider those defects at this stage? He does not have the power, because except he wants to correct clerical errors. Certainly, where the process is served, the processes were served, and was the issue of logo considered, the new novel issue or the material fact? The material fact was considered at that time. Also, assuming without conceding that all of this did not happen, did the applicant also act timely to bring this application before the court? Certainly, the applicant did not act timely. And in one liner, the judge said that the applicant deposed to affidavit that he became aware of the judgment in April, and he believed. Tell me in this country, if there is anybody, not talk of a politician, who is not aware that a judgment was delivered in December, ordering INEC to register NDC. Also, who is not aware that since that November, NDC had been registering members? Who also is not aware that, the leader of the NDC also announced on the floor of the House, that was shown across board, across all television, on the floor of the Senate, that he is now a leader, a national leader of a party? Who is also not aware that this matter was debated across various television and international platforms on registration of the NDC? Who is also not aware that there were so many comments as regards, the court will also deregister the same NDC? All of these are notorious facts that were in the public. So they say in law, equity aids the vigilant and not the indolent. So a court now aiding indolence. You said you were not aware of a judgment that was delivered in November, and you became aware in April. As at April, when you became aware, you also did not file your application. You filed the application in May. The application is dated May 4th and filed on the May 5th. So the court now closed its eyes to all of these things, and in one liner said you believe that the man had given enough reason. That alone should have warranted the court saying, you know what, I can't help you at this stage, go to Court of Appeal. So I think in that wisdom, that those that said that the court was robbed of jurisdiction to revisit the case are, in my opinion, spot on to have said that, because if you look at all the parameters and all the ingredients to be considered by the court to grant an application to set aside his own judgment, all of these ingredients, none of them is present in this case. And the issue of the logo that they are trying to highlight, if you go back to the previous judgment and this current judgment, you find out that INEC had consistently maintained that the reason for not registering NDC was a conflict in logo.
So, if the issue is functions official, if the premise for revisiting is not met, I'm talking about nullity, I'm talking about whether it's a deceit or default, if it is not timeous, what exactly is the premise of revisit and decision that has upset the polity now?
Unfortunately, this is the problem that some of our courts, with all due respect, are creating for all of us now. And that's why I feel so sad when people look at me and say, Liberals, your institution, you people are the problem of our democracy. And sadly, it is because of judgments such as this. When even the common man, who is not a lawyer, will listen to analysis and look at the parameters for revisiting a judgment, and you say they are not present in the instant case, vis-a-vis the fact of the case, and yet a judge goes ahead to, determine the matter that way. So you look at, you ask yourself, what would be the motive for doing this? And I said just now that if assuming without considering that all of the issues, including logos, were not discussed, but for public policy's sake, the fact that your order had made a lot of people alter their position, for all you know, because we don't have record here, there are people who would have even died in the process of traveling from point A to point B to register for this political party that your order instructed INEC to register. All of this, the court did not take cognizance of this notorious fact that people have altered their position also. This is not a question of morality, because some people will say, oh, you're preaching morality. No, this is a question of law. Public policy is a question of law that the court also do not close its eyes to, because the judge lives in our society, in the same society with us. And then also the fact that on the basis of this, the party had altered its position, collected money from people, and then now you also need to consider the time for doing this. If you ask yourself, if you are not asking all of the parties to come before you, assuming without considering that this same political party is registered or the matter is considered, sorry, at the end of the day, you now ask all of the parties to come before you, and then you, in one liner again, or just one day, because it's originating application, you consider all of the prayers, and then you grant the order again, go and register. And then 5 months later, just few weeks to the election, another party comes and says, you see, I submitted my application. The name of the party has the NDC. My own is so similar to it that I should have been considered. Are you going to grant another application again to say, let me set aside, and so that you will come before me? If you do that, what you are having is there will be no end to litigation. Then the provisions of the Constitution would have been serially violated. That also makes provision for the hierarchy of courts. So that means a court can perpetually sit on appeal over its matter, provided you find a loophole for bringing an application to set it aside. The Supreme Court in Pretoria authority have laid down the provision, the criteria you can, under which you can set aside a judgment. A court can set aside its own judgment. And that was why I had to marry those issues with the fact of this case. And they do not tally. They seriously do not tally.
Just to be sure, you said a court can't set aside its own judgment. That's exactly what you said.
ordinarily, the court cannot set aside its own judgment,
right.
except there are exceptions to that rule. To every rule, there are exceptions. Except that judgment was given without jurisdiction. The judgment also was given without service, because service also confers jurisdiction on the party. The judgment also was given by fraud. The judgment, there were material facts suppressed in obtaining the judgment, and also the judgment, if it's a consent judgment, the court later discovered that the party didn't actually agree. But in considering this exception, the court also needs to look at what was the attitude of the applicant. Was the applicant timely? Was it, did the applicant behave in a way to draw the sympathy of the court to say, yes, you know, we sympathize with your cause? Also, will the respondent be prejudiced if that application is granted? All of these are the criteria that the court must look at in granting application to set aside. So in this case, that was why I had to bring the fact of the case. What is the new evidence that the court used to set aside this? The new evidence is that logo. That new evidence was considered in the original application. INEC deposed to a fact that because of the conflict in logo, we did not register this NDC. The court considered that fact in delivering a judgment, an earlier judgment. So now, reconsidering the fact, that was why I brought the case of Onyebuchi and INEC, that the court can no longer, at this stage, reconsider that fact again. It is now left for the Court of Appeal.
All right. Another clarification that we require at this point in time, because I'm not privy to what was filed by Mohammed Sani and others, in which the Kogi State High Court initially mandated INEC to register NDC. This Peace Movement Party, is it a new actor in this particular case, or was it the same actor in that old suit between Mohammed Sani, others, and INEC, in which the Kogi State High Court now asked INEC to register the NDC? Is it a new actor on the scene, or it was always listed in the old case?
I didn't get your question. Whether
this Peace Movement Party that has brought...
No, the Peace Movement Party was not part of the original case. And so if you read the judgment, it is stated there that is an applicant. Is the applicant asking the court to set aside the judgment that it made, that he just became aware of this judgment.
So, Mr. Oshoma, based on this, does Peace Movement Party, coming 5 months after that old order had been given in December 2025, does it have locus in this matter?
That's what I'm saying, that even though the issue of locus, it's not a straight jacket thing. It is a fact that will determine locus. The issue of locus, Peace Movement, first and foremost, if truly, indeed, in fact and in law, that the decision of the court affects them, and they also, were not aware of this matter, and that the decision affects them negatively, they have a locus to apply to the court to set aside. But the court, in granting that prayer, the prayer will have to look at the attitude and also the fact that they have presented in this matter. So, the fact that they have presented in the matter is the fact that their logo is similar to the logo of NDC, and that they submitted theirs in 2015, NDC submitted theirs in 2017. And so to that extent, that granting this registration, their registration also, they are fighting for registration. Even if at the end of the day that the registration is granted, that means it will conflict with the logo. So the court now decided, okay, well, since these people have shown cause that their logo, and INEC has said the logos are similar, and so, yes, they have a locus. But the question I am saying, the issue I'm saying is that even without them being in the originating case, INEC has stated in that matter that the issue of logo was considered before the application not to register NDC. That issue was already considered. The position of the political party, the applicant now, had been considered by INEC, and they had stated that material fact before the court determined. So if you now come before the court in arguing your locus. What the court ought to have done would be, well, this opposition, INEC had placed that position before me in considering my original judgment. And I don't see it as a new information coming to the fore that if that information was before me, my judgment would have been otherwise. INEC placed it before me. My judgment is the same. The only person that can review this judgment now is the Court of Appeal and not me. So that will now determine the question of locus and the question of jurisdiction or jurisdiction to reverse the earlier judgment delivered. In this case, the court in one line said, well, you came, I agree that you became aware of this judgment late. And also I agree that the issue of logo was not properly considered in the previous judgment. And so now let everybody come and state before me. What are they coming to state before you again now? When in preliminary, you have agreed that the two logos are similar. You have agreed preliminary that these two logos are similar. And so you have set aside your order. So you're not asking them to come back. Come back to do what before you? To tell you again that the two logos are similar, and you now say, well, I will no longer register this, I rescind my decision. INEC, you can no longer register the NDC. No, you can't do that.
All right, Mr. Shoma, you know, political litigations and jurisprudence is very concerning in Nigeria, and that's why we have people like you. So, simplistic, non-legal mind. The simple question, so let's go back. What logo was INEC making a counter affidavit over? Whose party's logo was NDC logo conflicting with? Because if a PMP just came, that means it looks like it wasn't PMP. Whose party's logo was that? No,
PMP's application has always been with INEC since 2015.
Okay.
NDC's application was with INEC since 2017. So when INEC refused NDC's registration on the ground that it conflicts with other parties' logo, it can be PMP, it can be APC, it can be any political party's logo. INEC just deposed to that fact. The court did not. The court in granting the application to register did not say, well, please supply me for that material to determine which of the particular logo. I am also not aware if INEC also in its counter affidavit also attach exhibits of this logo. But what I am saying is that the issue of logo was the reason INEC took that administrative decision. And so having considered the issue of logo, whether specific, particular political party, INEC has stated that we did not register this party because it conflicts with logo.
All right.
So now that the new party is coming up to say the logo of the party registered, 5 months after the registration of that party, 5 months after the registration of that party. So we are coming back now to say we just became aware that this logo conflicts with our logo.
All right, Mr. Shoma, yes, my apology. We're totally out of time. I think you made those points very strongly. So another simplistic question, as at the time, and because this looks like it's a bit disturbing. I use that word cautiously. As simple as logo is, couldn't INEC have insisted that at least just change your logo? We're talking about logo. There's nothing too special about it. It's just logo. All this argument is logo.
I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to go there because if I go there, somebody would say, maybe I'm not discussing law. I'm discussing facts. The easiest thing to do, even Corporate Affairs Commission, if your name is so similar to another name, or for example, you are registering your promise, you are registering your brand, and it is similar to another brand logo, they will tell you that your logo is similar to another logo. Change the logo. If you insist on this logo, then we can't register it. One would have expected that commonsensically, INEC would say, this logo is similar to this logo. Can you change another logo? Or that the court had ordered us to register a party whose logo is similar to yours. So that means that because even though your application came in 2015, the fact that yours had not been registered and this had been registered, that means in law, this registration now is first in time. So there is need for you to change your logo so as not to conflict, because the registration is first in time. There's notice to the whole world now of this new party with this logo. So that means since your own has not been registered and this material part were placed before the court before the registration, then certainly you will have to alter your own. It's solved the problem. But because politics here, that's why people are blaming the ruling party. Because here, people will always, want to throw spanners in the work and make a mountain out of a non-existent molehill. And I must say this, all of these are happening because we no longer grow political parties. We have turned political parties to a chanja market, cash and carry commodity that, like vehicles, tokumbo, you buy and drive to the next spot. If you can no longer use it, you discard it. Imagine if these political parties were grown organically, and the hell that would have been let loose by now. But because we no longer want to grow political parties, we can change from one platform to another. That is why even some persons who will be sympathetic to the cause, considering the interview of the leader of the party, who said, well, if you cannot accommodate what we have said, then go and form your own party, then those people will look at, well, good riddance to bad robin. But it's still not right in law. These are very simple issues that shouldn't even taking us to this place. It's interesting, the common denominator is just logo, as basic as it is. Interesting. Mr. Shoma, we thank you. Sorry, quickly, it is beyond the logo. It has not been taken beyond the logo because some people want to make a mountain out of it. Yeah. Logo. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, as always, for bringing your expertise. We appreciate. Liberal Shoma is a legal practitioner. He's our professor online. He teaches us law online. We'll be in class today. yes, thank you. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we get to the big issue of state police. Now it's going to be before, I think after the harmonization, it's going to be before the State Houses of Assembly to consider and approve for the president to assent to that bill for us to now have state police. But that's a conversation next. Stay with us.
Welcome back. It's still your perfect morning starter on Channels Television. And as we progress in our conversations this morning, we're now looking at the matter of state police. It's no longer a matter of how it will be accomplished anymore, but a matter of time following the accelerated consideration on the floor of the Senate, during which the executive bill transmitted to it by President Bola Tinubu got accelerated hearing and passed second reading. And so depending on who you talk to about state police, it appears opinions are still divided as to whether it is a silver bullet required to ensure that Nigeria's security challenges are addressed sufficiently and the much needed stability for, our economic aspirations to be actualized, whether it is that solution required. Let's get right into it this morning again. And this time around, we'll be looking at the state police subject from an experience standpoint, through the eyes of former Assistant Inspector General of Police, retired Mr. Wilson Inalegu, who joins us this morning from our Abuja studio. Retired AIG, good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
And so I'd like to start this way. You are experienced. You've been in the institution. You were in the institution for a very long time. You served. You saw how the current police structure works. And so from hindsight, how do you suppose that the state police structure will work side by side with the federal police, what will now become federal police? What would the new architecture in state police look like?
Thank you. Well, I imagine it will look like, you're having a dual policing system. I think the Nigeria police is used to that, having a dual policing, because today, even though the Constitution prescribes that Section 214, 1999 Constitution, that there should be a single police force for Nigeria, but we're all aware that today you have the Nigeria police, where you have a Nigeria police division, some few meters away you still have the civil defense police, station. That is by the way. Now, come to community, state policing. Well, first of all, I think only thing I think is going to add is going to bring more personnel, more manpower to policing in Nigeria. Because the Nigeria police force today is grossly understaffed, grossly underfunded, logistics not provided. Otherwise, the Nigeria police force is a fantastic organization, is competent, is able to do the job of policing Nigeria. But there is no recognition for the police as to be able to enable them to deliver on their mandate. A police force that have very few vehicles, and when they are available, they are rickety. A police force that will personnel on check may have to get their own money to fuel vehicles. I think those are the challenge. It's not that the police is not familiar with terrain and all that. I think it's just to make more personnel available. That's what I think it brings. So if the police, Nigeria police, will be enforcing federal laws, and the state police will be talking about localized security issues, petty theft, and the Nigeria police will deal with counterterrorism, border security, organized crime, and then banditry and the rest of them. And the state police will now concentrate on localized issues. But I hope they are not brought to enforce. Since the Electoral Act is a federal law, I hope they will not be brought into it. Because in my opinion, the speed we are going about this, I hope they are not going to be involved, because they are not going to be trained sufficiently enough. It takes not less than 4 years to become a police officer. And then to ensure professionalism, if you draw people from thugs and other supporters to form the state police, it's going to cause chaos. It's going to cause anarchy. So the only thing I think they are going to bring is the personnel that the Nigeria police does not have today. They may recruit and bring, but we are praying for that they will not use some members of vigilante or members of thugs or supporters of political parties or individuals to form the nucleus of this police force, because that has been the challenge. That was the challenge. That was why the late General Aguiyi Ironsi set up the Yusuf Gubi panel of inquiry to look at the operations of Palace Police, Native Authority Police, the Akoda, Dansanda, and the rest of it, the Native Authority Police. The idea was, look, are they performing? Were they performing well? Because after the 1964 hotly contested national elections, there was chaos, there was anarchy everywhere. And I think they were fingered, because majority of the police in the Native Authority were formed from supporters of political parties, were formed from thugs and the rest of it. And that was a fear that was expressed in 1958 during, at the Wilkins Commission of Inquiry, when the minorities expressed fears. So when it formed from there, then in 1966, the panel sat for almost 2 years. In 1968, in March precisely, General Yakubu Gowon, the head of state then, now released a white paper, and all the police forces merged with the Nigeria police force. And I remember in those days, even when we were young officers, when we joined the police force, and then when they say, they see that officer, they say, oh, it's a convertee, a Native Authority police. So even the federal police were looking at them with a certain perception. So if you are bringing state police, will you ensure professionalism? will you give them the same training so that you don't set up your own police training school wherever they are coming from? They must operate a central training system so that they get familiar with each other. Both the federal police and the state police personnel get familiar right from training. I think there should be uniform training, and then there should be strict guardrails, firewalls. But I think it's very difficult because our institutions are very weak. Would they be strong enough to withstand the torrents of desperate politicians? That, for me, is a challenge.
They said they put some, AIG, they said they put some guardrails, you know, safeguards, all kinds of names. We've been interrogating it. But let's stay with what you have raised, the issue of training. Part of the amendment to the Constitution shows that there will be a minimum requirement. However, every state cannot go below. You can go far and above, depending on the uniqueness of your state. So, operationalization, let's say, for instance, let's give a hypothetical situation. Let's say between now and, say, December, state police becomes constitutional. And if there are states that are ready, because not every state that will be ready immediately, for those states, the federal police will surface. If there are states that are ready to, you know, have their own state police, are they going to get already existing policemen from the federal to join, or they're going to train new people? And you said 4 years. The reason I'm asking this question is your mention of 4 years. Does it mean we have to wait till maybe 2030, maybe one, to begin to have effectively state police? What are you trying to say in essence, for the kind of standard policing that you're talking about?
Yeah. What I'm trying to say is you cannot bring people, give them crash training, train them for 6 months as recruit constables, and you deploy them to the field. They need mentorship. They need training and retraining. And in the Nigeria Police Force, we call them development courses. Those trainings are very critical. And before you have somebody have some modicum of professionalism, it takes a minimum of 4 years. And so if you train them for example, for 6 months, are you going to deploy them for sensitive duty, like election duty? For example, if they were guys exposed to thuggery, how are you going to reorient them? How are you going to give them a new orientation? How are you going to get them to become really professional? So no matter what they do, what you do, I don't think they are going to be effective. And it's very few states that will be able to do that. So the concern that I raise in this issue is that, yes, the laws have been passed, but practicalizing it, operationalizing it on the field is going to be challenging. And the officers presently in the Nigeria Police Force, are they going to accept to take retirement from the federal police and be re-engaged and be engaged in the state police? Are they going to do that? Perhaps Lagos, Akwa Ibom, Rivers may have attractive benefits. There may be more. For today, I think it's Lagos and Rivers or Akwa Ibom or Delta, perhaps Kaduna and Kano, that may have the capacity to be able to have the police force. Ordinarily, state police should have been a good thing. In the U.S. it's practiced, and that is the system with the U.S., every state have their own police forces, but you know, they have a more developed democracy. And then they have a lot of guardrails or firewalls that are able to keep politicians in check. But you know, our institutions here are weak. Lots of complaints, lots of apprehension among the public, and justifiably so. So, even if they pass the law today, I'm not sure any state is going to be able to have that police force that can function in this democracy, perhaps going forward, in which will give the opportunity to have these officers properly trained. Because it's not a military, it's not army that maybe you just gather recruits, train them 3 months or 6 months, give them AK or AK-49 and the rest of them to go to the field. This involves a lot of emotional intelligence, psychology, interaction with public, getting building confidence, building the confidence of the public, trust building, especially in a situation where there's general apprehension among the public. And the experience of the 1964 election to 1966 is still fresh in the mind of those who were alive then. So that is the challenge. I think the training will go well, but police is not something just you have trained. That is why, like other agencies who deploy to the field, they do 3 months, 6 months, go back to training. No, because the police is a critical institution that has primacy on internal security, on public order management, on crime prevention. And this is a critical institution worldwide. And let me tell you, by the time we begin to have an effective police force that is catered for, the development of Nigeria will begin to rise. Nigeria will only develop with an effective police force. And the state police may be good, but are we starting well? I think that is the challenge. And if every mind is going to be a mindset that, look, I'm looking at Nigeria, my country. I'm looking at what is happening in our community, kidnap of skilled children, mass kidnap of people from communities, banditry, and the rest of it. If I am looking at it from that perspective, then it's good. But you and I know that some people have misguided opinion or intention, if I may say, about state policing. Yes, it's good to give power. We are in a federation. All the states are supposed to have that. But then there were concerns expressed in the past by minorities, by different groups. Yeah. And those from the 1958, for the events of 64 to 66, showed that the minority fears of 1958, which led to the Wilkins Commission, were not misplaced by the way they were misused.
Yeah. So AIG, you express a valid concern on the matter of training. If we look at our most recent history, and we recall sour police civil relations, hence the hashtag EndSARS protest of 2020. And some would say that the morning shows the day if what we have is this current policing structure that may be replicated in the state policing, then we're just reinventing the wheel and the problem has not been solved. So in addressing the matter of training, do you align with the views of those who say we already have, an abundance of structures? The NSCDC, some have neighborhood watch in their states, and some have a security initiative. So these people, these institutions at the subnational level already have some form of training. Would you align with the thought that this can be collapsed into a form of state police structure such that we have just less time to ensure the training that we require sets the stage for an actualization of state police?
Yeah, but you see, there are orientations that if you carry from where you are coming from, because if you come to the mainstream policing with those orientation, they may not work. As a divisional police officer many years ago, I knew the battle I fought with vigilante. They believe in quick fix. They think the prosecutorial process is lengthy and unnecessary. They just want to get somebody a matter done, and then it is done like that. So the main thing that I see in all of this is it is about intention. One of the funny things that, let me describe it as funny. There has been a lot of reforms of the Nigeria Police Force. The AIG offices were set up as zonal IGs to be able to have supervisory oversight on the commissioners of police in the divisions. And those structures were not funded. I think the AIGs never had funding to send their officers to begin to monitor, mentor, and see what the officers on the field are doing. And I think those were issues that are very critical. Yes, you can collapse, but like I told you, police requires specialized skill in handling of issues. It is not the enemy is there, take gun, or yeah, face them. No, it's not like that. So those you can, but going to sift to look at those who are qualified from these parallel organizations. It was done before. I think in 1979, when after the Civil War was over, and they saw that they had military personnel that they were going to release into the public. Some of them who were considered good enough were offloaded to the Nigeria police. Some of them did very well, some not so well. But it took a long time for them to get to get integrated and to internalize the policing culture. So it is not like a tap water, a tap. You open, water flows, and then you do the water flows. So that is a challenge. It's because of the specialized nature of police. And my experience, let me tell you, I have been part of the United Nations peacekeeping forces from 1989 in Namibia and in Sierra Leone several times. And many countries attach a lot of importance to policing because the development of a country is tied to law enforcement, effective policing, because you've got to get it right. And then building police is a gradual thing. It took us, then the country, when I was there, they wanted to have a national police force of 8,000, small police force. They started from 6,000, and they started with the change management. And it was a lengthy process. From there, you graduate to the other arm, and gradually they begin to civilianize the police force, and then gradually, and then they turn out they became a police for good. So, like what I'm trying to say is that these things it takes time, it takes effort, and then it takes some patience to be able to build a Nigeria.
Winding down, I know that I mentioned guardrails. I'm sure that maybe when you look at the laws, let's hope that these things can be implemented. From your expertise and your experience, when should we effectively start expecting, if we are serious, despite the urgency that it requires because of what we're experiencing now, when should we start having active state policing? No, it doesn't matter the state that is ready. I know Lagos may be ready, Rivers, maybe the FCT, or maybe Kano. At least those four may be ready.
Yeah.
How soon do you think, if we're to get the real result we need to raise these state police guys, how soon should they be ready? 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, 6 months?
No, like if we, once the law is passed and the recruitment process starts, I imagine that by December, but we have an election as a priority, might be immediately after the election, those officers are sent to training, they spend 6 months, and then those from the existing police force, Nigerian police, if some CSPs or ACs want to join the state police, they form the initial, the nucleus, and they will start. So I imagine that when you train them and you give them retraining, it will take, might be in the next 2-3 years, gradually we'll begin to metamorphose into the police. Even look at the EFCC. When they started, they had a lot of input of Nigeria police force, and gradually they got their people recruited, appointed, and then gradually they began to train them, and that took more than 5 years, if not more, maybe 5-6 years. I don't have my timing correct, but what I'm trying to say, to have an effective police force will require patience, and this patience, like I said, by 4 years they begin to manifest. They begin to show those characteristics of observation, investigation, and then you begin to see community engagement, effective community engagement, not seeing themselves as part of community. And then the states will not be thinking of building barracks. They begin to give them mortgage loans, because these state police should not begin to think of having barracks. Rather, I think they should give them the housing so that it will become an incentive. That means you take a mortgage. As you take this mortgage, it should run throughout your 35 years in service, which means if you go collect bribe and you are apprehended, tried and dismissed, you could have a foreclosure of your house, of the property that you have. That will become a kind of a check. But like the mobile police force, which I think the Nigerian police force would have, will continue to retain, will be there. We can have concentrated barracks. But these state police officers, the governor should not think of beginning to build barracks. Well, I think what they need to do is to have mortgage facilities for them so that they can live among the population and interact, so that the population can see them. They can see the population, so that they are just all over the place. And then these mortgage loans, they will give these officers, which they will be paying on a monthly, servicing on a monthly basis will help. And they know that if after 10 years you engage in corrupt practice, you are not able to continue to pay. So the fear of losing or having their families thrown out of the property they have bought on this will begin to act as a check on any corruption tendency they may have. I think, and that will be a morale booster for the officers to give their best. Welfare is a critical element. Good salary is an important element. Good uniforms, and a well-dressed officer with that confidence will help.
You know, retired AIG, by all levels, this has been a very productive conversation, and we thank you for bringing your experience to bear on the subject of state police. Wilson Inalegu is a retired Assistant Inspector General of Police and former Police Commissioner in Kogi State. Thank you for joining us on the program, sir.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you.
Well, that's how it's been on the program today. Thank you so much for your time and company on the program. It's the new week, and we look forward to telling good stories. Speaking of which, it's been more than 40 days now that the Oyo captives have remained in captivity. We hope for a safe return of all kidnapped victims from Oyo to Ekiti, Kogi. We hope that they return sooner rather than later, and our hearts go out to their family members at this particular point in time.
The prayer is that they will return as soon as possible. Thank you for your time and company. Sunrise Daily is up at the top of the hour. I'm Jeffrey Uzoma. Bye-bye.